a major trade. Yannick Ngakoue. Declan, it's Zolgad and Declan here. We are here to talk about this trade. So I woke up this morning at about 8 or so.
Good for you. I was more of 10 a.m. for me today.
Well, good for you. And I did have some beers last night, and I figured I woke up, let the dog outside, thought to myself, I'll go back to bed. But before I go back to bed, why not take a look at Twitter, right? See what's going on. See if something happened. Well, wow. So I believe the initial reports, if I'm correct on the timeline here, came out, Dex, about 6 a.m. I think it was Schefter, that the Vikings have made a major trade. They've gotten what I think we can all say at 25 is probably the elite pass rusher who is on the market. They give up a 2021 second round pick. They give up a 2022 conditional fifth round pick, which could get all the way up next to a third round pick if the Vikings win a Super Bowl,
which will happen, obviously. So it will be a third round pick, is what I'm saying.
Well, and you will give up the third round pick in a heartbeat then. Your initial impressions after seeing this trade, though, and the fact that the Vikings went from, I think, having some questions as to who was going to rush from that right end side to now, for this year, seemingly having a pair of 25-year-old studs in Danielle Hunter on the left side and Yannick Ngakoue on the right side.
I mean, they didn't just replace Everson Griffin here. They upgraded. I mean, they literally upgraded with one of the more elite defensive ends in the NFL. And I mean, yes, we have made a little bit of chatter on what's going on with Danielle Hunter. He's been absent for the majority of training camps. Is it a contract issue? Is it this little tweak? What's going on? And I think for now, at least, we can just put that aside and just understand that the Vikings have essentially two Pro Bowl first, second team caliber all-pro ends now on both sides that are 25 years old. Now, I know that they're going to restructure his contract from that tender, and that's the goal. That's why he was basically traded here. But I am curious how that all does fit in long term. But Brzezinski is a wizard, Judd, as we know, and I'm sure he will figure out how those puzzles shape out.
Something has to give here, Dex, and I don't know if what you said is true, and it might be, and that's the fact that Hunter might have a tweak, but he is also staging I've got a tweak. I'm not playing for this contract. Something has to give here. Now, the Vikings, I believe, if I've got this right, came into today, so as of midnight Sunday, with just over $12 million in salary cap space, okay? Yannick Ngakoue had been franchised. He had the franchise tender slapped on him by Jacksonville. He wanted out. He hadn't even signed that. But if I'm not mistaken, that was something like 17.2 mil. Yeah. He agreed to sign the franchise tender, which, by the way, is the only contract that he can play under 2020. He can't get a multi-year contract until March of 21. But he can agree to restructure the one-year contract, which he did. I believe Ian Rappaport of NFL Network had it coming down by like 3 mil. Okay. So I think salary cap-wise, the Vikings are going to have to restructure one more player. And our friend Courtney Cronin of ESPN speculated or was told by somebody, by a source, that it might be Riley Reef who might get restructured, which makes sense here. This is very much an interesting move because it's definitely an all-in move for 2020 that I did not see coming. But to what you're saying, Dex, and this is where come next March or before it's going to play out in a very interesting way, is the salary cap looks like it could go down as low because of the pandemic of $175 million per team in 2021. I believe it's going into this year at 198.2, and the Vikings are above that. So they've got to get below that. In other words, somebody has to go. And I will say this, Dalvin Cook's people 2 weeks ago, Declan Goff, should have taken what the Vikings offered and said, thank you very much. Where do we sign? Because I'll start by saying, where's the money going to come from for Dalvin? And we all know that if Zim has his choice, Zim, I can give you a running back. He's really, really good. Or Mike, come here. I can give you Yannick Ngakoue from the right end to rush. Mike's going to be like, let me think about that. I will take Ngakoue. So something or someone or some things plural have to give here. And I am guessing that we are in for a very interesting decision. I also think that Dalvin Cook is now destined to play under I think it's a $1.3 million deal in the final year of his contract. I'm thinking that he is stuck there and that he is going to be the first domino to sort of fall as far as too bad, so sad, should have taken the offer. Just a
Right.
guess.
Yeah, it's a pretty good speculation, just because I think that Dalvin, wanted more money, and unfortunately the Vikings were only able to offer so much. And this is just, again, more. It shouldn't overshadow the acquisition of Ngakoue, because he's a very, very good player. But I think most people are looking at this after the initial shock of, wow, that's a big trade, and wow, we're less than 2 weeks from the season, and that's significant. You don't see that too often, to the point of, wait a minute, how is this going to work contract-wise? I mean, seriously, how is this going to work with Ngakoue, with Dalvin Cook, with just your long-term financial commitments as is? It's already in a tough spot for them to be in. So I think it's normal for any other football fan, whether you're a Vikings fan or just an NFL fan, to figure out, well, how the heck does he fit in to the salary cap structure? That being said, I am curious how quickly he is able to pick up a playbook and get ready to go, because I think in football, Judd, it's the one sport that when we hear, number one, you don't see in season or trades like this pre week one. There's a reason why the NFL trade deadline is the most boring of all the systems. It's because they just don't really happen too often. So I'm curious how quickly Ngakoue can adapt to a Zimmer defense. Like, I know he's already a freak of nature. It shouldn't be that difficult of a transition, but I do think we underestimate how hard it is to pick up a new NFL playbook and start and go, even if it's someone as smart and as talented as Ngakoue. I'm just curious to see how quickly he's able to learn the playbook and be an impact player right away, because that does take time, and I think we a lot of the times underestimate it.
So I think if he was a cornerback or played a different position, I think that your point is very valid, Dex. My guess is the words "rush the passer" are pretty simple. But like, I'm sure there's going to be some intricate, this is how we zone blitz or defend the pass and things like that. But I think this really comes down to a guy who week one, which is now 2 weeks from today, when the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers come to US Bank Stadium, I think you're just going to say, rush him, rush the passer. And here's the thing too. I'm willing to bet that a lot of the Vikings opponents spent the last few months starting to game plan just for strategies and things, and saying, well, we can now take all of the resources that we put on the Griffin side and Hunter and put them all on Hunter's side, right? Because a Fadi not going to scare you. So if you're the Packers or the Bears or Detroit, you probably said, oh boy, Griffin's gone. A Fadi might be okay. I don't know. But we are going to put everything that we possibly can on the right side because Daniil comes from that left end. Today throws that, if you're an opposing team, into shambles, because you're right. They didn't just replace Griffin today. They upgraded. This kid's 25. This kid had 8 sacks in 15 games last year, and he was hurt. This kid hated playing in Jacksonville, and he played that well.
Right.
So I think you're right. I think that there is no question that the Vikings upgraded at that spot. And if you're a tackle now, for the Packers or the Bears or the Lions or a Vikings opponent, if you're the offensive tackles, this is a potential nightmare, because now you've gone from Hunter and Griffin being a pain to a bigger pain.
Yeah, and I think pass rushers too are just that new wrinkle in today's NFL that always evolves into, first it was having a line, then it was cornerbacks, and then it was hard-hitting linebackers, and now it's obviously back to rushing the passer. You saw what the Packers did last year, getting Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, and we saw how many times they attacked Kirk Cousins at US Bank Stadium last year. They made it hard on opposing quarterbacks. And yeah, I think a lot of teams probably looked at the Viking situations, most notably NFC North teams, and said, okay, they lost Everson Griffin. They still have Daniil Hunter, who I think everyone can recognize is obviously top 5 at what he does at his position. But how are they going to replace it? Well, now you got Ngakoue, and it makes it that much more difficult to game plan. And these are now 2 guys that you can get creative with, like you saw in the Saints game, where then they switched them up. You have obviously Daniil going on the other side, and then Everson rushes. Like, they can get so creative with how they want to rush the quarterback. To your point of, like how difficult is it to pick up a new playbook, new system, and go? You're probably right that in the fact of go get the quarterback. It's not like a wide receiver. It's not like a lineman where you're trying to learn new schemes. If it's a zone blocking scheme or whatever it is, it's go get the quarterback. Let's just focus right on that, right? We know you can go get the quarterback. He's also forced a ton of fumbles, I know too. I think only 3 other players in the NFL that you had in your note have forced more fumbles. So the guy just has a nose for
14,
football making plays.
14. This kid can make plays. This guy is going to be an upgrade and good. The other thing that this does now too is it buys you time with your young cornerbacks, right?
Right.
Because if I can get to the quarterback now, guess what? He does not have time to dissect the Gladneys and the Dantzlers.
Right.
And so short of going out and getting an impact corner, this really should help. Because if I can get my two ends now rushing and in the face of the Rodgerses and the Staffords and whoever the hell the Bears are going to start, that's a big difference now. And so I've helped myself immensely in my secondary by getting more pressure from my outside rushers, which is going to be huge. So this is, look, I will say this. You know what? We can criticize the Vikings all we want. And they've got some folks, and they certainly have. But where I will sing their praises, and I actually did a column about this today after the trade was first reported for ScoreNorth.com, Dex, where I will sing their praises is, since the Wilfs bought this team in 2005, Declan, they have been unafraid to make impact moves like nobody else in this town consistently. Mm-hmm. Some have worked. Favre in 2009. Cousins, I mean, he's not perfect, but that was an impact move, and it wasn't. I think we can all definitely agree, an upgrade from Keenum, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go back to, and this move is very mindful. If this works contractually, this move is very mindful of the April 2008 trade with KC. Jared Allen was unhappy there. Jared wanted out. The opportunity sort of just plopped itself on the Vikings' front doorstep, and they leapt. I mean, they made that trade, and that trade for a long time was a great trade. And now this is obviously all going to come down to now with this contract and the last year being restructured, how they plan on keeping this kid, or if they do or not. But if they do, this is the type of trade and move that since 2005, the Vikings have regularly pounced on. And I think they deserve a lot of credit, because when teams don't make these moves, Declan, when given the opportunity, how often do we in the media or sports fans say, typical Team X, right? They're not aggressive. They don't care. They don't blah, blah, blah. I think rightfully so, a lot of us have asked a lot of questions about what the Vikings' intent for 2020 is, because I do believe that before this morning, they set up pretty doggone well for 2021. But there were some things about 2020. Pierce opted out, the cornerbacks, where I think we all rightfully so said, are they really trying to win this year? Well, today's move is another one of these, let's dive into the deep end of the pool and try it. It might work, it might not, but it takes guts. And I give the Vikings under the Wilfs a lot of credit for having guts and making moves that excite a fan base.
Yeah, I think you're definitely making a good point that they are probably the most aggressive and more calculated owners too. It's not, they can be aggressive and make some silly decisions. We've seen that happen numerous times among Minnesota sports teams, but they're very calculated. They know what they're doing. They also have a great front office, and even secondary moves. We know the Favre and the Cousins and those trades, but then you always forget about Jared Allen. You kind of forget that they also traded to get Sam Bradford. They're not afraid to go out to the free agency, get someone like Bernard Berrien and spend a lot of money on a position that you need. They are definitely the owners. If you are asking for them to do something, I think they usually do it. The only criticism is even though they have attacked the offensive line, they've drafted, they've signed free agents. It just maybe hasn't panned out, but they've always had the willingness to go and do it, which I do think gets lost in translations a ton with normal Vikings fans. Is oh, well, they never addressed the offensive line. No, they have. It just, they've thrown a lot of darts and it's missed, unfortunately. But you can't knock them for not trying to throw the dartboard and just patchwork it.
The Wilfs, I think, are asked to do things by Spielman, Zimmer, and company, right?
Right.
And the Wilfs, ordinarily, I think, as far as I can tell, say so. You're right. If we want to dissect the lack of offensive line impact moves in the last 8, 9, 10 years, we definitely can. But that's not them saying no. I don't think that's Spielman and his people choosing what they're going to pursue. And look, I'm sure Zim signed that extension, and Rick did too in the last month or so. And I'm sure Mike said, this defense is not up to snuff. And guess what, boys? I coach defense. So yeah, I'm with you completely. If we want to dissect what they don't do, but that's not the Wilfs. That's the football ops people. But I just think it's a lot of fun to wake up on a Sunday morning and see that the team that you cover, or if you're a fan, your favorite team has made this move, because it feels like we live in a town where we're often very critical of the fact that it seems to be somebody else. In the Vikings case, the Vikings are often the team that makes the bang move. And as you said as well, and I did too, sometimes it works, sometimes it does not work, but it's damn fun and it makes it exciting.
Yeah, and that's what you want to see too, especially if we haven't been able to see preseason games and all this stuff. It's been obviously an awkward, horrible year for the better part of everything involved, and for them to go out and make a splash move like this in Ngakoue, and I'm sure he'll, God willing, we're going to be starting here in football starts in less than 2 weeks. The Vikings play the Packers here in 2 weeks from the day as we're recording this, so I'm hoping Ngakoue's on the field, and I'm excited to see him bringing down 12 with 99. Little sandwich there, I can't wait. Little Aaron Rodgers sandwich.
What? I don't want to hurt the guy.
I don't want to hurt him.
Is Barr going to come in and slam 12 down now?
Hey, I respect Aaron Rodgers, the guy. I just maybe he should be sacked a little bit more at US Bank Stadium. That's all. I enjoy it.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here. Again, the Vikings, if you have not heard, have a deal to. It's not been made official yet as we record this, just to be clear, but multiple reports, and the Vikings basically confirming Yannick Ngakoue, who was the unhappy defensive end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, is now the happy defensive end, we think, for the Vikings. Plenty more reaction to this on Monday as well. Mackie and Judd and Purple Daily at their ordinary times, so you can definitely find those. But we just wanted to have an emergency Purple Daily podcast to touch on this. He's Declan Goff. I'm Judd Zolgad. We will talk